Oh, okay. You are live.
Yeah, we're live. So, hello everyone.
Yeah.
Uh, we've got what is it now? We've got 2 minutes to go on on
Yes.
the on the challenge. So we're counting down. It's looking like a lot of people, tried and succeeded quite well. So we're really excited about this one. So it's the first
Yeah, it's
time we're.
amazing. We had 4 people so far, right? Doing the last challenge,
Mhm.
which is really impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
it's a pretty tricky one. It's a pretty
Yeah,
tricky
yeah.
the,
one.
the the cool part is like these challenges, I did not think that people were actually going to be able to solve all of them in the time frame. So like that shows the amazing skill of these people. And I know that some of them are still just students. Like that shows what a career these people have ahead of them. If as a student you can just come in and break this whole competition, solve everything within a record time, that's really really cool.
Beautiful. That's
I hope
beautiful.
we have here some companies looking at these names, and this is a great place to hire people.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really impressive, and
And also these
it's really fun.
challenges that they were made with real life scenarios in mind. So almost every challenge that you see here is actually a combination of a couple of things that we actually saw in real applications in real life. So this is not because oftentimes people say, "Oh well, CTFs, they're not real life. They don't matter." Well, they do matter because they're based off of real life situations. And if people can solve these challenges, then people can find it in real life in your applications. So this is definitely good learning material.
And by the way, Robbie, good job on creating these challenges. This is amazing. I know
Yep.
how much time you put into this, and it's really really hard to come up with those ideas. So especially like you
Thank you,
said, to
thank you.
make them realistic.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Actually,
Right.
I think the shorter they are, the harder they are sometimes, right?
Sometimes, yeah. We're coming
Yeah,
down
it's
on
not about
6
length.
more seconds.
Yep.
4,
Six.
3, 2,
Two,
1,
one. That's
and
it. You want
time
to give it a
is
final
up.
refresh? Let's
Let's
see
give
where
it
we
one
are.
final refresh to see anything changed. There we go. So 4 people with 6 solves, so 4 people who solved everything. We then have one person with 5 solves, and then the rest have 4 solves,
I
and
think
there.
that challenge number. I think that challenge number four. Um, challenge number four might have crashed like a minute before end or
A
something.
minute before the end,
Yeah,
somebody was still trying hard. Somebody
somebody was
wanted
still
that
trying
last
it. They
minute.
were able to crash the server. So we'll pick it up, obviously. But right now, that's it. Time is up. So I'm sorry about that. But it does seem like people done great job here. So I'm really excited about this. So Robbie, why don't we just go through the challenges, and now that it's done,
Yeah,
and nobody can continue to solve it. We already have probably the winners, which we'll announce tomorrow. And by the way, let me just before you start, we're sharing it tomorrow because we want to audit the results. We do understand that sometimes people are confused about, or at this time it sounded like some people were confused about the way that the time is calculated. So we used an average, but we understand that some people expected something different. So we'll think about a creative solution and come back tomorrow with a solution for you guys upon announcement. Um, I can assure you it will be fair. And so, yeah, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And I think what we should do right now is have Robbie walk us through one by one the challenges and kind of like waving of hands, show us what are the potential solutions here. So we're not going to give you the payloads, but we are definitely going to talk to you about what was done here and how could you have solved it. So Robbie, the floor is yours.
yeah, exactly. And before I talk about the challenges, one more quick note that we are giving away some swag, and what you need to do to win that swag is to make write-ups, one write-up, multiple write-ups of the challenges that you solved here. And the coolest, the best write-ups, the most complete write-ups, they will get some swag sent to them. So definitely do that. And if you, well, if Right now, we're not going to go into the payloads for the vulnerabilities. We're just going to be talking high level on what the issues were. But your write-ups can obviously go in much more depth, find some cool solutions, and then we will give you some swag for that. So definitely do that. But starting with the first challenge, we talked about it before. This was a challenge where you had a JWT token that allowed a lot of algorithms. And now JWT is a standard, and the standard is well documented. And in the documentation, it supports all of these algorithms, but it also supports the non-algorithm. And this was actually just a debugging algorithm for JWT, where it's not actually cryptographically signed, which means that any person can actually create their own token, sign it with a non-algorithm, which pretty much means do not include any signature. And of course, that makes it really easy to just modify the data in the JWT token. So the vulnerability here was the fact that a non-token was included. And this is actually a CVE, a vulnerability from 2011 when the first JWT libraries came up. And they just implemented exactly as the specification said, hey, we support all of these algorithms and the non-algorithm, but obviously not thinking about the security consequences. So yeah, a really cool vulnerability in JWT. I think a lot of you solved this. So let's move on to the second challenge. And this one we also talked about earlier. So it was the Nginx configuration that we have here that did not allow access of the flag, but it had this location here to /assets with an alias. And the vulnerability here is that after /assets, a slash is missing. So what happens is anytime /assets is in the URL, it's going to replace that with the full string here. So what is the solution? Well, if we say, and this is a bit small, but it's in my URL, if we say assets /flag.html, so if we go back here, then I would say assets /flag.html, then the full URL will become user share nginx html assets //. So it would escape out of assets and then put flag.html there, which would load in the flag.html file, even though if you normally want to load the flag, you're not allowed to do it. And this is called an off by / vulnerability in Nginx. If your slashes here are not set correctly, then you can have this issue. Another vulnerability that can happen in real life and does happen in real life because it's so easy for somebody configuring Nginx to make this mistake. Just missing a single slash at the end of your location causes this vulnerability to be there. So yeah, definitely one that can happen in real life as well. So really cool challenge, 54 solvers, amazing. That's really great. But now we move on to challenge 3.
I think Robbie, if I may, I think even without understanding Nginx, vulnerability in this case, people gave it a try because hackers think about it. I'm not sure developers do, maybe, but hackers thought about how can I do something like directory traversing or something like that.
Yeah.
Without even understanding what they're looking at. But that's a real cool challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I think even some automated tools could figure this out potentially. So yeah. Mm-hmm. But then we move on to challenge 3, which had a lot less solvers, so only 10 solvers. And this is a really cool challenge because we have a recipe book. And this recipe book, well, you can look at recipes and load them. And if you look at the source code, it has some really funky features. One feature, if I make this a bit bigger, is that it uses service workers. And if you've never heard of service workers, they run in the browser and they can kind of persist across multiple tabs and they stay in your browser and whatnot. So very interesting. And in this case, a service worker, we won't go into it, but it's used for caching. I don't know why somebody would need to definitely cache the recipe book. In this case, it's to make the recipe book work offline. So this page even works if you don't have internet, which is a cool feature that uses these service workers. But the way they're set up is that you register your service worker with a URL that you supply it, and it will then go and load that service worker from that URL. And of course, a service worker is just JavaScript. So if you can load a specific service worker that you choose, then you have XSS. However, in this case, the service worker URL comes from an element with the ID SW that is on the page somewhere. So if we go onto the page, I think, here there's a div with ID SW, and it has the value cachemanager.js. So that's the file that's going to get loaded, and you cannot change it around, except for when you add another functionality of this website. And that is that people can choose their own color for the web page using parameters. So somebody can set the mode and the color. The mode can be dark mode or light mode via a get parameter. The color can be any color that you want. And it's then going to set the ID of a specific element on the page to your mode and your color, and the text of that ID to a specific color, and that's going to change the page. But the big issue here is, and this is a DOM clobbering vulnerability, what if you make the mode be SW and the color be another URL? In that case, your preferences here will change, and you will here have another div that has the ID SW and then the value that you want. That is not Cache Manager, and that way you could load a different service worker and get a cross-site scripting in that way. So a really, really cool challenge. And this is actually also based on a real vulnerability found by Portswigger on real applications. So really, really cool stuff. And quite a difficult one. A lot of people struggled with this, but that's part of the game. And if you didn't solve it, and now you had this epiphany of, oh, I forgot to look into that, then definitely go back to it right now and try to get the solution. Because you still can. So at events.wiser-ctf.com, you can still access this challenge and then try to get the right solution for yourself, because that will definitely help in the learning process. So yeah, really cool challenge there. Amazing. So then let's move on to challenge number 4. This challenge was solved by 23 people, and it is another web application in Python.
I don't think
this
it's
time.
going to work. I think it failed. Let me check.
But I have it cached, so I can just show it here. So we have a website where you can enter your profile information, your username, your email, and your bio, and you can then save the profile. Pretty simple, but it also has this feature to load in an object. And what is this going to do? Well, when you store information, you can store information in, for example, JSON, but you can also store an exact object in Python, and this is called serialization. In this case, we're using Pickle, is a serialization library in Python, to load a specific object on the page, and that way you can not only save your profile as JSON, but also as an object. The issue is that with these objects, when they're being loaded, they're fully being reconstructed. And with that becomes some risks, because that also means that functions in your objects are also reconstructed and stuff like that. And some functions are actually being run when reconstructing this object. So if you look for Python deserialization vulnerabilities, then you will definitely find some examples of deserialization vulnerabilities that would work here. And in this case, another issue was that you're not seeing the output. So the function runs, and it runs your code. So you can run code on the server, but you're not actually seeing the output on the web page. And that means that you need to go for an out-of-bands way of getting data. And out-of-bands means is that you're not going to see it on the web page, but you're going to have the server send a request to a different URL that you control, and then you can see the data in that URL. So again, that's the solution for this challenge. And this one is something that we see a lot today with AI applications, because in AI, it's very common to have an AI model and pickle it and then store it to send it to somebody else, and then somebody else unpickles it. So this vulnerability has been very common in those AI hubs where you can upload models and download them, stuff like that. So definitely a very old vulnerability that became modern with the whole increase of AI lately. So yeah, really cool. And then we have 2 more challenges here, and these ones were really, really hard. So I'm not going to be able to go in a lot of depth here, But we will definitely hit me up on Discord later. We can talk about the solutions. So this challenge, hack the admin. You have a Flask application in Python that has an API, and this API allows you to execute JavaScript. And that's maybe weird. You have a Python application executing JavaScript. Well, that's because we're using a library called JS2Py, which is going to take JavaScript code. It's going to look at the code and convert it into Python code, which is very weird, but it works. And it is actually pretty secure. There's no real way to do dangerous stuff from this way, from this JavaScript code that gets converted into Python code. So in itself, it's pretty secure, I would say. So you can call it in a strange way. It does some weird stuff here where it checks whether you're a local host or not. But in the beginning, that doesn't really matter. You're just gonna run this code and see, hey, I cannot do anything really. I can execute code, but I cannot do anything else. Then you may go and look at the documentation for JS2Py. And the documentation for JS2Py will tell you that there is something called PyImport. And if you put PyImport in your JavaScript code, then you can import libraries that you should otherwise not be able to access. So you can import OS and execute commands there. But if you try to do that on the server, it will say that PyImport is not available. And that is because, obviously, PyImport was disabled, because else this challenge would be way too easy. There is a way to enable that. And that is because in this piece of code, where earlier I said it was not useful, it actually does enable PyImport for a short second. It enables PyImport, it gets your IP address, it does a check on your IP address, and then it disables PyImport anymore. So you need to kind of make sure that whilst PyImport is enabled, that you get to this code. But that seems impossible, except for when you are a local host. Because if your IP is localhost, then you will run ip.local, and ip.local actually does not exist. So this will throw an error, ending you in this except loop. The except loop forgets to return, which means that you go into this exception and just continue here, whilst not having run this line of code. So at that point, PyImport is enabled. But how do you become localhost? Well, in this function above here, you run this get for a script that you supply. So you have to kind of do a double SSRF. So you have to have a double payload inside your payload that on the first try downloads a script that holds the actual payload and then runs this check, which shows an error here and goes through all these loops. Yeah, this was a crazy challenge, and I'm still super surprised that people were able to solve it this quickly. But that is kind of the whole idea behind this challenge. And this also comes from a real vulnerability. So this may seem crazy and insane and would never happen, but this kind of thing actually happened in a real application. So yeah, this is a really cool challenge, and I'm very surprised that 5 people were able to solve it. All 5 that solved it sent me messages after being like, wow, that was insane, but I love the journey. And that's what this kind of challenge is all about, like that journey of figuring out steps and then getting stuck in and figuring out the next part. So yeah, really, really insane challenge if you ask me. All right.
And people can still try to solve it, right? The URLs are still open if somebody wants to give it a go after we explained all of this.
Exactly, and definitely do. Like, this explanation is obviously just going into the basics because we don't have all year to talk about these challenges. Right. But try to take what I'd say and convert it into code yourself. And also, if you're stuck, ask on the Discord. Other people that have solved it will probably be wanting to share their experience with how they solved it. So yeah.
What we're gonna do
later,
What we're going to do is right now you can go directly to the challenges and solve them. This is locked, but in a couple of days I'm probably going to reopen it for folks to play, so you can still use the UI here if you need it, though you don't have to, because you could work with the challenges directly. It's gonna, you're gonna get you're gonna get it done, but it's not gonna add you to the leaderboard or something like that. So yeah, I'm going to open it up again so you can continue to play with it, but directly with the URLs should work for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So the leaderboard is locked because obviously we don't want people to just be able to sneak their way into the leaderboard after the event is finished. But definitely play around with these challenges still. I think it's a great learning opportunity.
Mhm.
But yeah, with that insane challenge, people must have thought, well, this is the end. There's nothing that can get over this. Well, we had one more trick up our sleeves with challenge 6, um, which was the Evaluation Corp Certificate of Support. So you have a certificate generator and you give it your name, and then it will generate a certificate. So that is quite a simple thing. That's, I guess, like, is a modern thing. Like, you have so many certificates these days. You do something on a website, you get a certificate. There are probably a PDF where your data is being put on the PDF. And there's various ways of doing that. And this application does that by having HTML data that contains your name, and that is then being rendered in a browser, and the browser will then convert it to a
Sorry.
PDF. Now, the issue with that is that obviously, if you can inject into that HTML, then you effectively have an XSS on the server. Now, an XSS is a vulnerability that's, well, it's not really, it's, you attack another person, but in this case, you're actually using XSS to attack a server, which is interesting because a server oftentimes has various controls, is inside a network that you are normally not allowed to access. It can probably talk to other microservices. It has potentially access to cloud endpoints and stuff. So it's a totally new environment that you are operating in if you can make requests from a server. And that's called an SSRF. And that's kind of the goal of this challenge to exploit. So with an SSRF, we will, for example, load an iframe that points to localhost, and then you can read data from localhost in your certificate. However, the server is protected against that because whenever a request is being made, so in that browser, if a request is made, then we're going to check, is that URL safe? And it's going to run this function, is URL safe, which is going to use a library that's going to check if URLs are safe. And this is a library that's really good at preventing SSRF. The issue here is not with the library, it's the way that it's used. Because it's going to check if we get that URL with this filter, is it safe? It's going to say yes. If it's safe, it's going to say false if it's not. And then if the URL is safe, then it's actually going to check if your result is a dangerous URL and send a flag. In real life, this would not say if this result is a dangerous URL. This would just say make the request that is dangerous. And then in this case, this is the IP address for a cloud metadata endpoint. And in real life, if somebody can access your cloud metadata endpoints, then that is game over for your company, because that means that they can access your AWS credentials or GCP credentials or whatnot and take over the entire cloud instance. But this result should never be possible because this here blocks it entirely. Well, that is true, except for a little thing that exists, and that is DNS rebinding. And DNS rebinding is super cool. So what you do is you have a host name, and when a server makes a request to a host name, it's first going to need an IP address for that host name. So if you make a request to example.com, your PC is going to ask, hey, what is the IP address of example.com? And in DNS, every request that you make has a time to live. So if your time to live is 5 minutes, then for the next 5 minutes, your PC is going to remember, okay, if I need to make a request to example.com, that's the IP address. Except for if you set that time to live to be really short, like 1 second. And then every second, your PC is going to have to ask again, hey, what is the IP address for this host name? If you then make that host name switch to where it's pointing, to which IP address it's pointing every second, then you can make it so that on this first request that's being made, it's going to point to a safe URL. But then when it actually makes the request again, when it actually makes another request, so here, it is actually going to point to another URL, and that way you bypass this whole check with a DNS rebinding attack, and that way you can actually attack internal networks, which you would not be able to do otherwise. And that is this challenge, which only had 4 solvers. So yeah, those were the 6 challenges. I see some comments on YouTube thanking us for the amazing game, and that CTF was wonderful. I think so as well. I think a lot of people learned a lot of new things today, and I will hopefully they will all go and apply that to make the world a much safer space. So yeah, that's all, I guess.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think this is also a demonstration, at least for developers, how knowing to build something is not the same as knowing to break something. So just totally different mindset, that's why I think developers should practice this type of games, because it will really build that hacker mindset that will let them see in advance, the vulnerabilities, instead of waiting for someone else to find it for them. There's another question here. Till when can we submit the write-ups? I think Itzik, you said like a week or two. You're on mute, Itzik.
Right now.
Itzik, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So yeah, we said through following Sunday, so 2 weeks from today.
So 2 weeks from today we're going to announce it, or 2 weeks from today we're going to accept the write-ups?
We're going to accept through 2 weeks from today, and then a couple days later we're going to announce.
Okay, great.
Okay, so you have 2 weeks to write write-ups on each of the challenges. We're going to pick 10 best ones throughout, and try to write maybe even a couple.
And comment below. Let us know which one you like the most. This was really fun for us. And we are probably going to do another one soon. It takes time to prepare the challenges, but this is not a one-time thing. We're going to do it hopefully often. This is fun. And
we also
go ahead.
We also have these every 2 weeks. We have one challenge. So
Right.
definitely follow Wiser on LinkedIn, and then every 2 weeks we have one-off challenge, just so that you don't lose your touch with CTF. So that every 2 weeks you can get your little hit of dopamine from solving that challenge until the next CTF. So you can be ready for the full load then. So yeah, definitely follow Wiser on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you. So the servers for challenges 4 and 5 are up now, so you can keep on trying if you you still want to play with it a little bit. The UI is shut, so you won't be able to get into the leaderboard, but you can still play the challenges, all of them right now.
Yeah. And Itzik, we spoke about earlier, maybe the next time we do this, we'll open it up for some community contribution challenges. So if anyone wants to have their challenge up, then DM Itzik.
Yeah, great point. So we're building, Robbie and I, these ones were Robbie's. Sometimes I write them. We're creating the challenges, but we'd love to involve community. So if you guys have ideas and want to come up with a cool challenge, you want to deploy it and send us a link and let us play with it, send us the code, give some ideas for challenges. That could be awesome, because we're gonna publish those challenges. We're gonna give you credit next time we'll do this game again. Hopefully soon. We're gonna include some community contributed challenges. So think about cool stuff that could be nice for folks to play with. Our focus on a regular basis is developers, but any challenge can be great for a game.
Yep,
exactly.
Cool. So I think that's it. Thank you everyone that participated. Congratulations for the winners. We're going to announce the final results on Monday. And thank you everyone. And thank you Itzik and Robbie for setting this up. This was amazing. And until next time, bye-bye.
Till next time.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.